What do you get if you combine teaching, gymnastics, and academia? Well, Polly Parker, of course. In this episode, we put together a bunch of Polly's experiences and expertise to talk about being better and making the most out of the situation that we're in. Enjoy. Welcome to Marvellous Women, the podcast. On this episode, we have a very special guest, Polly Parker. It is so wonderful to have you on the podcast. I'm super excited.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So, Polly, let's just rip the band-aid straight off. Who is Polly Parker?
Well, it's a good question, isn't it? It's I think Polly Parker today is a combination of a whole lot of different experiences that have evolved through my life. And I would have answered that question very differently, even 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago. I think who I am today is someone who's had great diverse experiences. I think I've always believed in human potential and always worked with people. So I really strongly believe in the intrinsic power that individuals have to grow and develop and to be the best they can be. And I believe that everyone does the best with what they have, and it comes out looking very differently. So I think three of the things that really contribute to who I am today is my academic training, and that's how I met you in the first place, Sam. So prior to doing my PhD, I was working in education, and the PhD gave me a real focus on research, which brought about a focus on rigor and evidence base. So I think that's a really important part of it. I've done a lot of voluntary work in counselling, and that also is a part of supporting people to make the most of the situation they're in, and again, to be the best that they can be without necessarily thinking of it in those terms at the time. And then I have a background also in international gymnastics. So I have spent many years as a gymnastics judge, coach, and a former participant. And one of the things about gymnastics is it's very rigorous. It's very disciplined, and it has very much of a focus on outputs and performance. So when you think about the combination of that focus on performance and empathy for people and the situations they're in, I think it's an integration of those things that's really contributed to the way I support people today to be the best that they can be.
What a fascinating story, Polly. And I think, that last little bit that you've added there about the gymnastics, I think, and I'd love to hear, because otherwise I've got an idea in my mind, but, we should never assume, because as we all know, it makes an ass out of you and me. The link between, that kind of the gymnastics and that idea of getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, and almost like a relentless focus on being better.
Yes.
And how that contributed to kind of where you ended up of going into education and, wanting to help people to be the very best. And I really like what you said, making the most out of the situation that we're in. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the connection.
Right. Yes, I think it would be fair to say throughout my life I've been very driven, and that's what you tapped into then. I think we're not always very gentle or kind with ourselves or with other people sometimes, but mostly with ourselves, about coping with a whole lot of issues and situations within the context that are far from ideal. And we never know what's really going on in other people's lives. And so we, see, and it's great that you talked about making assumptions, because it's very easy to make an assumption about what's going on. And I think in connecting the discipline of gymnastics with the academic performance, they're both performances actually in different arenas. And so they have a lot to integrate with one another. I think the counselling comes in and really focusing on not giving solutions, but asking good questions. And that's part of supporting people's development as well. So moving away from the solutions. In gymnastics, there is solution, and there's also room for creativity and innovation, putting things together in a different way. And I think in my academic career, one of my early mentors really encouraged me to read outside of the discipline in which I was embedded. And I think that also is symbolic of integrating different pieces from whichever position we might stand. We can see a different perspective. So perspective changing is really important and very hard to do. Actually, in practice, it's very difficult to really change perspective and not just hear another idea and then pretend, if you like, to yourself
or dismiss,
or to someone else.
or dismiss,
or dismiss. Yeah, pretend you've heard it and then just smile and nod and move on. So yes, very easy to dismiss it. And I think part of being the best you can be is not becoming entrenched in the positions that we're in.
I'm really curious, Polly, looking at your background, and I think someone who has that kind of focus on being the best you can be and potentially quite punishing physically for something like gymnastics, to then talk about, being kind to yourself and having empathy. How do those two work together? Because I think we don't do that very well. And that idea of I'm going to push myself, but yet I'm going to be kind to myself seem like a little bit of a paradox.
Well, I think you're right. And the first thought that came to my mind when you asked that was it comes slowly. So I'm at the stage of my career now. I'm semi-retired and retired from the university, but I'm still coaching. It's taken a very long time. And so I think that is hard. And it's a good example of taking a different perspective and integrating them, because in either situation, one might be in play, but to put them both together is really difficult indeed. It's that integration, I think, that is a practical way of connecting two things that seemingly almost contrary.
I'm just thinking to myself that there are probably people who are listening to this who maybe do have difficulty with those. It's almost like a duality, really, isn't it?
Yes.
And that idea of pushing yourself really hard, but also of being kind to yourself. What words of wisdom would you have? Like, how do you do that?
I think an important
Asking for a friend. Asking for a friend.
An important part of it is knowing yourself well, and that also takes time. I when I first was teaching on the MBA, and as you know, I was teaching the introductory course on the MBA, and there was a lot about frameworks and different ways of making sense of what's going on, and very little opportunity to really make sense of the person themselves within those contexts. So I think getting to know yourself is really important, knowing what events or situations or people create a trigger for a certain kind of response. And there's also a very strong external focus there, where a lot of demands are made of people in the workplace about performing. And it often seems as though there's no option to slow down, take time out, be kind, I think it is very difficult and requires a very conscious practice
Mm,
of being able to take time to do it, even in isolation, before it can be integrated. I
mm,
think this is particularly true in leadership, where I see leadership as a practice, not as a role or a position or a title. And so, what are the things we practice? And from gymnastics, I learned a lot about practice, that it's a lot of repetition
mm,
of different pieces over and over and over again. And one of the things that is required for people to integrate kindness to self is to practice it.
mm,
I'm a great believer in working with peers. I think it's part of the importance of relationality in our lives, actually. And
mm,
practicing with a friend or having a friend to be able to discuss, different points with is really important. Sometimes the kindness might come in focusing on what do you do in your life that energizes you.
mm,
So one of the things for me, and I'm sure it comes from my background in physical education and gymnastics, is exercise energizes me. So even if I'm really tired, I will make time to go to the gym, to go to Pilates, to go to yoga, to do those things, because it's an activity that feeds my soul, if you like. And so that could be one way of being kind, is to make sure that I take the time to do those activities that do give me energy. For some people, it's running, swimming. I mean, there's a whole range. And again, getting to know yourself is knowing what kinds of activities drain you and what kinds of activities energize you.
mm, mm. I'm just absolutely fascinated with the wisdom that that you have. And going back to that introductory course that you talked about, absolutely, it was one of the highlights of my MBA. It just set everything up so well. And there's quite a few of my peers from that program, and we still talk about it. We
Right.
still talk about it. So it was just so foundation and fundamental to actually, and I don't think we do this enough, and I think this is especially important for leadership, like taking the time to think about yourself and to get
Yeah.
to know yourself is not a luxury, and it's not a selfish activity. It actually is an important thing that you have to do in order to be better. Is
Yeah.
that something that you came across, or that you come across when you're working with people? It's like, oh, I haven't got time for that. Malarkey.
Yes, I think it's a bit like insurance, really. You haven't got time not to do it. And one of the key aspects of that course that you're talking about was integrating leadership with conceptual frameworks.
Mm,
And very often academic work is focused around intellectual pursuit, which is nothing if it's not also accompanied by an understanding of what it means when I apply that.
mm,
And so I think it is essential, and that's why it was in the foundation course there. Because just as I believe that, when I look at myself, that I've been driven by always being better, I think leadership can always be better than what it is.
yeah.
And so that's part of integrating that, is taking time to recognize that. The other thing about leadership is that it's role modeling, and people may not do as I say, but they will certainly watch what I do.
Yes.
And so for leaders in positions of, anyone in a leadership position, which can be anybody, noticing how they take time to get to know themselves, to pace themselves, and it's a way of coping with the pressure of change, the speed of change,
Mm.
that's ever present now in the workplace.
You've just said, Polly, that you've always been driven by being better. What do you think is the source of that? Like where in the story of Polly did you go, actually, I want to be the best I can be?
I'm not really sure, and it's a question I have pondered and reflected upon, because my parents were very supportive of whatever I did and had no expectations of anything. I was first in family to go to university, so it was not anything that was externally imposed upon me.
Mm,
I think some of the things, like I had an experience early in when I was at university. So I got married when I was 18, and that certainly had a profound impact. And everyone then, and I use that global word advisedly, expected that I would just give up and not carry on with my studies. I lost my scholarship because I got married, because I think it was anticipated that now I had a man to take care of me, and so I lost it. And that really annoyed me, and it's annoyed me more in later years than it did even at the time.
mm,
And I think there were situations like that that made me think, no, I can do better than this. You're not going to beat me.
yeah.
I'm going to, I'm going to prove that I'm worthy of this. So,
I'm fascinated by the potential answer to what it is that inspires you, that's because something has to sit behind this.
yeah.
What is it, or who is it that has kind of proved a pillar, or pillars of inspiration for you?
Um, I think I'm inspired by people who really work hard, who haven't necessarily been, handed everything, and work really, really hard. I remember a gymnast who was in the Olympics years and years ago now. Her name was Vera Kozlowska. And I can remember watching her preparing for the Olympics, and the particular move that she was preparing in the podium warm up was a mount on the beam. And she was very good at this mount. It was a difficult mount. She was very good at it. And I think in the warm up, she did it something like 70 times. And I'm thinking, oh, why do you have to do it so many times? You might do it 5 times, 10 times if you're really obsessive, but 70 times. And I think from that I learned about the discipline, the determination, and the essential part that practice and successful practice plays in success. In the end, she didn't actually win the beam. She came second in the beam in those Olympics, but she did win overall. But I can still remember watching and being absolutely fascinated. So I think that was really inspiring, to think
Mm,
that um, uh, even the best don't have it easy. No one has it easy. It's not saying, oh, I wish I was like that because he or she or they've got everything, but really working for it. So I found that inspiring. And years later, after I stopped doing gymnastics and stopped judging, I would still think about that, and I would see other people in their fields applying that discipline practice to whatever
mm.
they do.
What a fascinating story. And I wonder if that experience of watching her and that realization that even the best don't have it easy might have contributed to that kind of really strong intrinsic drive that you have to be
Yes,
better.
yeah, 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 because it can always improve. So it's, yeah, I think that's right. And thinking of leadership today, generally, I think leadership's got a lot of room for improvement,
Yeah.
and I'd like to see more people driven by improving leadership as a practice rather than relying on one person as the leader
Mm.
to show everyone else the way. It's the hero on the hill model of
Yeah.
what is a leader, and I think leadership can is a practice that can be improved, and everyone has a part to play in that. So there's no one who's the best out there. That each of us operates with other people, and the more community, the more support, the more sense of belonging we have, the better the outcome, I think. So, yeah.
That topic of, how do I become a better leader and the best leader I can, I think is a really interesting one because there's a lot out there talking about, how to be a
Yes.
better leader. And I think in the organization and economic climate we're at the moment, there's a lot of organizations who are kind of, pulling funding for things like leadership development programs.
Yeah.
What would be like the top three things that you would recommend to someone that might be a low or no cost to help them be a better leader?
Well, the first thing I would say would be to do whatever you can to really know yourself well. So, the point that we were discussing before. A second, very low cost and very highly effective process is peer coaching, which I think is more effective. We still talk about mentoring, but I think that peer coaching has really surpassed mentoring for some time now and for a lot of reasons, and can be incredibly helpful at providing feedback and support to people to improve their leadership. And I think another very low cost way of improving leadership is to take time out to reflect. And we talk about this as sitting on the balcony and observing what's happening on the dance floor. So this is adaptive leadership language, to take yourself out of the busyness and really notice from a different perspective what's going on, what the patterns are, what the interplay is. And this is particularly helpful in situations that are marred by political negativity, and I'm talking little p politics here. And I'm amazed at how many people talk about the politics in the organization, and it's there. And learning to observe what's happening can be a very helpful way of improving leadership. So I think knowing yourself, getting support from other people, and then connecting with looking at the bigger picture and seeing how that contributes to what's happening, to recognize what part you play in the mess. So everyone has a part in the mess. It's whether or not you think, no, I don't like politics, I'm not taking any part of it. Well, you're already on the board, so you're part of it anyway. You might as well be part of it and aware as part of it and not aware. So I think those three things, and they're all no cost.
Yeah.
So,
No cost at all, which,
yeah.
and I think that's, your point there, even the best don't have it easy. Even the best kind of learning doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah. And it's not about learning lots of new frameworks or getting credentials from, highly reputable institutions, although they can be very pleasant things to have. It is available much closer to home, and can be just as challenging and even confronting for people to recognize how they interact and what's really happening.
You've talked about one person that's kind of inspired some of your thinking. I'd love to know, if you looked up the words marvelous woman in the dictionary, whose face would you see and why?
Yes. Well, I haven't looked it up, but when I think marvelous women, the person who comes to mind for me is Brené Brown. I had the pleasure of meeting her once, and I, felt like a teenager or a rock star.
Fangirling?
Yes. She gave a keynote at an address, a keynote address at a conference I was at. I just find her so inspiring and so real and so practical, and the way she speaks and the way she writes and the way she thinks are really ways that offer something to people from a whole range of backgrounds and experiences. So I would see Brené's face as the marvelous woman. Yeah, I read all her books and follow her
Yeah,
podcasts.
she definitely has Some very inspiring and helpful, I think, and practical to, to use your words, I think, words
Yes.
of wisdom. Speaking of words of wisdom, are there any polyisms that you have? Is there some kind of quote that you find yourself repeating quite frequently that probably would be insightful and inspiring for our listeners?
Um, what I would say to people is um, seek out your best supporters,
Mm,
know who they are, and they're not necessarily the first people who come to mind. Um, uh, I always behave with integrity and authenticity and engage in work that's meaningful, that shows that what you do reflects who you are.
mm,
So I think it's a question I often ask the people I'm coaching: how does what you do reflect who you are? And
mm.
how is who you are enabling the work that you really want to do? There's a lot of work that needs doing in the world.
Yes, there is.
And it often takes a lot of courage, to come back to Brené Brown, um, courage to be vulnerable and to be really true to yourself in terms of who you are, um, uh, and how to be authentic. And I don't mean that. I know sometimes people use authenticity as a way to say, well, this is who I am, so you can take me or leave it. I'm just being authentic.
Yeah.
I think that's um, inadequate. I mean authentic in terms of being aligned with your true values
Mm.
and making sure that the behaviors and the way you interact and the way you show up is aligned with your values, and then connects with people who will support that in the workplace. So that's the authenticity bit, I think.
And then hopefully if you're doing meaningful work that really reflects who you are and you've got that values and you're working in alignment with those, that first question about seek out your best supporters, hopefully you're going to be one of them. Like I am my best supporter. I will tell you,
Yes,
Polly, I've been
yes,
waiting for someone to answer that, who's the marvelous woman face that you see, and to say me. I
yes,
am the
yeah,
most, and I'm like that's just something we don't do. There's think about supporting ourselves, and we need to quieten that voice,
yes,
or the voices
yes.
in my case.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And it is about yes, I am supporting me. I am kind to me. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I
These are
am
my
proud of what I've
values.
done. And yes, yes, that's right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
We're
Yeah,
fascinating animals, aren't we?
yes.
I've got one more question for you, Polly. What's the best decision that you've ever made, and how did you do it?
Um, Probably doing my PhD. It because there was a lot going on in my life at that time, and it wasn't something that I always wanted to do necessarily. And but deciding to do that opened up many other doors to do what I really wanted to do.
Mm,
And yeah, I think it gives a credibility externally to people that enabled me to be taken seriously. So it wasn't me not taking me seriously, but I think there is a process to go through where other people will respect you. And very often that is an external validation. And for me, I
mm,
think the PhD did that I was able to still do the coaching that I wanted to do because I had a different language to put around it to
mm.
connect with people. Um, yeah, so it wasn't something that I set out. I always want to do that. But in hindsight, when I look back at it, I think it was a turning point to open doors to do the kind of meaningful work that I have always enjoyed. It doesn't feel like work because it's just engaging with people and supporting people and helping them be the best they can be. So it doesn't feel like work, and that's what makes it really meaningful too. I think it's not hard.
No. Well, Polly, I just want to say thank you so much, not only for being on the podcast today, but also for the support and inspiration and wisdom that you've given me. I mean, when I took that class with you, that was 2012.
All right.
So that
Yes.
is almost 14 years ago that
Right.
that you know, kind of guided me for a whole semester around that self-awareness and how do you find out about yourself, not only from a subjective perspective, but also gather some data, you know, be really objective about it. So thank you for
Yeah.
being here today on the podcast, but also for your many years of helping to guide people to help them be their best.
Well, thank you, Sam. It's I really appreciate that, and may I say it's wonderful to see you and the way your career's unfolding and the
Thank you.
success that you're reaching, and it's just really, really great. So, developing marvelous women, and here you are, one of them, and having this podcast series. So, thank you. Well done.
Thank you. Polly, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences with us. And one particular piece of advice that I really love that I just want to finish the episode on is about repetition and start by doing small things well. And I think that that's something that's really accessible for everyone to help them become the best that they can be. So, Polly, thank you. Until next time, stay marvelous.